It is 6 minutes after 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. Micah Opelka is my name, in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show. And we are here on a very busy day. There apparently is a deal about to happen for hostages, some of the hostages to be released from Hamas to Israel. We don't know exactly how many are Americans. We're hoping to find out. But remember, the big number we were told was 240, and this would be 50. So you've still got 190 people being held. And this is women and children. And I'm sure Hamas is still holding some members of the IDF. So the war cabinet hurdle apparently was cleared. And next will be the regular cabinet, then will be the full government. And it's just after midnight in the region. So maybe they're working all night. Maybe they aren't. I'm sure they are, because that's kind of how you do that when there's people's lives at stake. And we hope for the best resolution possible, which, in my opinion, would be squashing Hamas like a bug and getting everybody back. Now, I've teased this for a while, so I better get this out of the way, because I don't want to be accused of jerking anyone's chain. But I came to the realization yesterday that Democratic Senator John Fetterman and I are in sync on something. And I will tell you, it also includes Governor Huckabee in Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Governor Sanders, I guess I should call her, but I'm playing a little game with the Huckabee thing. John Fetterman has called for the United States of America to ban China from buying American farmland. Just want you to let that sink in. Fetterman, the guy who a lot of us are very worried about, especially I do a lot of work in Pennsylvania. I live across the border in Delaware, and he's a senator there, and they have a lot of power in what's happening in D.C. John Fetterman has agreed that American farmland should not be sold to China, and has also gone public in stating that he believes that we should take back the land they have already purchased. Now, we're talking about 300,000+ acres of farmland in America. I can't believe I'm agreeing with John Fetterman. He's also been a supporter of Israel in saying that Israel should be allowed to get rid of Hamas, wipe out Hamas, eliminate Hamas. And we know what the word eliminate means. We learned that yesterday with Congressman Goldman, who talked about eliminating Donald Trump, and then he since tried to walk it back a little bit. But John Fetterman, I just want everybody to let this sink in. John Fetterman has stood up and said, we don't need to be selling farmland to China. And China has so much farmland, one of the largest grow operations of marijuana, apparently, in the state of Oklahoma. And there are reports that the people working on that farm are not exactly free individuals, if you know what I'm saying. China's kind of got a reputation with forced labor camps. So if that's going on here, and Fetterman is one of the people who stand up, I hope there will be a whole bunch of other Republicans and Democrats who will stand up and say, okay, can we do something now? Can we stop this? So it's kind of stunning. First he supports Israel, and now he wants China to be stopped from purchasing land in America. Good for you, Senator. Perhaps when your brain got rewired from the stroke, maybe it awakened the capitalist part of you. Maybe it awakened a conservative part of the brain. I'm just saying the brain has incredible ability to heal itself. So I guess that's possible. We shall see. Also, looking at the dates of the upcoming presidential actual debates, we're months and months and months away, but there will be 3 presidential debates and 1 vice presidential debate. you have to wonder who is going to be on that stage. If you look at just the numbers right now among the GOP, it's Donald Trump, hands down. The Democrats are going to do everything they can do to prevent Donald Trump from being a free American and a free-speaking citizen at that time. But it looks like, based on all the data we have, that it's Donald Trump going to be representing the GOP. And there are a whole lot of folks who are happy about that, a whole lot of folks who are looking back to 4 years ago and saying, were you better off? Was the world quieter? Was America more respected? Were people messing with us? And you got to say, well, that would be a very good choice, Donald John Trump. And then you have to wonder who's going to be on the Democrat side. Is it going to be Joe Biden? Now, Biden's getting ready to go off to another family vacation. No, he's not going to his beach house in southern Delaware, in lower, slower Delaware, in Rehoboth, where he owns the most valuable beach property in the state that he paid cash for, $2.74 million paid cash for it. Gee, I wonder where he got that money. Probably from that series of best-selling books that he didn't write best-selling books, did he? Probably from his Netflix deal where he and Jill Biden produced a bunch of content for... No, they didn't do that either. I wonder how he paid for all that. I wonder how Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. managed to pay cash for that. Newt Gingrich might have an idea. Newt Gingrich was on Fox talking about the Bidens. And maybe he has some insight into how Joe Biden got his hands on the money to spend $2.74 million cash to buy the largest, nicest beach house in the state of Delaware.
In the long run, there are a lot of other things the House Republicans are doing that are going to end up mattering. The fact is that the Biden family increasingly looks like, in a newsletter recently, I called them the Delaware Sopranos. We get more evidence.
Yeah, they do. They do look like the Delaware Sopranos. And we're going to hear, I guess, December 4th is the date that James Comer has promised us, that we will get some kind of representation, some kind of idea as to what the testimony of Hunter Biden, James Biden, his wife Sarah Biden, and maybe Hunter's paramours, their testimony will be. It's December 4th, which is, it's kind of just around the corner. Are we going to get a block from the Bidens? I think we are. If they are the Delaware Sopranos, that Joe Biden's going to use every legal tool he can to attempt to prevent his son, his brother, his sister-in-law, his dead son's ex-wife, widow, to talk about this. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But is it going to be Joe Biden? He's going away to Nantucket this weekend. Joe Biden is once again going away to Nantucket, and he is going to be staying at the $20 million estate of a big Dem donor. He's done this before. He did it last year. He did it, I think he's done it the last several years. And you have to wonder, if you have the largest, nicest beach house in the state of Delaware, why do you have to go to Nantucket? Why do you have to stay at the home of a wealthy donor? What is that all about? It doesn't make any sense to me. It kind of has a little bit of a stink to it. But we'll find out. I believe the Biden family is trying to decide whether or not this run in 2024 is going to be a good idea. And maybe between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the decision is made. Maybe this weekend is part of the preliminary talks. Even though the Delaware Beach House is off limits to the media, no one's allowed to know who came in or out of that beach house. The administration told us in the very early days that when Joe Biden's at the White House, they keep records. When Joe Biden is at the beach house, that's private time, and no one's allowed to know who comes in or out. But I wonder if the Nantucket place just affords them a greater amount of privacy to have discussions as to what's going to happen. And who's going to be on that stage in September for the first of the presidential debates? And will they allow a third-party candidate, like maybe Joe Manchin or Jill Stein or Marianne Williamson or Robert Kennedy Jr.? Robert Kennedy Jr., he's kind of been quiet. Have you heard anything from Robert Kennedy Jr. in the last few days? No. And I'm thinking it may have something to do with the PR stumble that Kennedy made last week when he was seen walking out of an airplane bathroom without any shoes or socks. I know some people are just spitting out their coffee or tea right now or whatever you drink in the afternoon. But Robert Kennedy Jr. spotted walking out of an airplane bathroom, not a private jet. This was a commercial plane. He was flying somewhere on the campaign trail and walks out of the bathroom completely barefoot. Just think about it. Here was the report of that moment.
A recent photo on a flight is sparking an age-old debate. Is it ever okay to remove your shoes on a plane? Passengers snapped this photo of presidential hopeful Robert Kennedy Jr. with no shoes and, key point here, no socks. Kennedy was actually coming back from the bathroom with no shoes.
No shoes, no socks. I have to question the judgment of any candidate walking into an airplane bathroom shoeless, sockless, barefoot, and then walk. And he knows everybody's taking pictures. Does he just not care? That report aired on Comedy Central. Didn't get too much other attention. But what followed afterwards was former SNL alum Leslie Jones, a little bit of an off-the-hook kind of a comedian. Leslie Jones was guest hosting on this show. She watched that report and may have delivered the funniest takedown of any Kennedy I've ever heard. And I have to share it with you because after watching the video, after hearing the story of Robert Kennedy coming out of a airplane bathroom without shoes or socks, we need to laugh a little bit.
He went to the plane bathroom barefooted? This is the most disturbing video I have ever seen of a Kennedy, and that includes the one where a guy's head explodes.
Okay, that's a little harsh, but you got to admit it's funny. Leslie Jones referred to, of course, the Kennedy assassination of John Kennedy, which is 60 years tomorrow. But she didn't stop there.
Like, how are you the worst Kennedy? Your uncle killed a lady by driving off a bridge. But then I see your nasty feet, and I wish I was in that car.
She goes even further, but I'm not going to inflict it upon you. But I thought that was probably the funniest thing I've ever heard out of Leslie Jones, and pretty darn accurate. An incredible takedown of a Kennedy. Will Robert Kennedy Jr. be on the debate stage? He's currently polling in a territory that would threaten the DNC to either try and deny him or change the reporting of how the candidates' positions are seen. So we shall see based on the polling. And we've got several months to go before we get there. It's going to be interesting. And we all know Donald Trump wants all the debates canceled in the GOP because he's running away with it, and I kind of think he's right. We'll get to more of that as well. And we have James Rosen coming up from NewsMax to talk about yesterday's press conference where there was some incredible stuff, and he was pressing Karine Jean Pierre brilliantly as well. You want to join us? 888-630-9625. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince. Love that guy, Chris Plant. Old friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, if you didn't know. I've sat in on his show several times. And just a great guy all around. Mike Opelka, my name, sitting in for Vince Coglianese. And I have ignited some opinions, which is a good thing. And let's go to the phones and see what is causing people to reach out. Chris in Marshall is on the phone. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir. You're always my favorite substitute. Thanks for taking my call. Listen, I don't want Chinese owners of farmland. I don't want them to own sensitive land in our country. And I'm all for changing the rules of property ownership. All kinds of nations put all kinds of restrictions on all kinds of foreigners owning land. But this idea that we're going to go in and confiscate land that they bought fair and square, I stand steadfastly against. That's one of the things that makes our country better than China. We have personal property rights. Yes, we have eminent domain, but there are very, very strict and complicated restrictions on implementing that. If it was bought fair and square, it's their land. We can always change the rules going forward, and I'm all for that, and I think we should do that.
I wonder if you look at China the same way as you look at another free nation. China, to me, is a criminal actor. China, to me, is a criminal enterprise that has been working to subvert America for decades now, and in the last 5 years has been on a murderous campaign to eliminate the children in this country with what they've done with fentanyl. So if we look at them as a criminal enterprise, can we not look at the reclamation of that land as removing a criminal enterprise from our country? I understand what you're saying, but China
what onus do we put on the sellers? What onus do we put on the sellers of that land?
Well,
sold that land to the Chinese.
If you can't sell to a criminal, well, we're obviously running out of time here, but China never plays fair. China is a criminal enterprise. Shouldn't be allowed to do business in this country, in my opinion. Sometimes you have to act retroactively. Just a thought. We'll get into this. There's more. There's more. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show. It is 4:34 on a Tuesday. Nasty weather out there, but, we've had it good for a while. And it'll get better tomorrow, trust me. Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese. I have to put a button on a topic. We were talking about the shocking story that I agreed with Senator John Fetterman about China owning farmland in this country, and we should take it away. And I just got to wrap up because this lady's been hanging on for a while, so let's take care of business real quickly. Then we'll get to James Rosen from Newsmax. He's waiting patiently. Maud and Frederick, welcome, Maud. You get the last thought on the China land situation.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that it seems concerning to me that if they take the farmland away from China, then that means it's held by the government, I presume. So then between the government and Bill Gates, that's about...
Did we lose her? I guess Maud's point was if China doesn't own the land or can't own the land, then the government owns it. I imagine we'd have another sale of it. I would hope we would. But China can't, nobody can own land in China. It's not privately available. The government owns everything. And so it's troubling to me that China can come over here and buy our farmland, some of it near sensitive military locations. It just seems like it's a bad and stupid deal for us. We'll get back to that. But we have a bigger name on the line. James Rosen is somebody I follow on social media, and I would encourage you to do the same. He's a great follow, and he is a pit bull who believes journalism can still survive. And we asked him to join us today because of yesterday's press briefing and something that happened with Karine Jean Pierre. And her trying to make a point that I don't know if she was successful. This is the moment I'm talking about.
The polls that show that the electorate at large and also significant majorities within the Democratic Party believe that the president is too old. The polls that show the American people and also significant majorities within the Democratic Party don't want him to run again. And the polls that show his handling of the economy, foreign policy, all of these dismal polls, his job approval ratings, does the White House have any basis to challenge the accuracy of that polling?
I'm not challenging the accuracy here. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying to you is that, we're not going to change the minds of Americans. I get that. Americans are going to feel how they feel, and we're going to respect that. And I've said that many times from here. many times. I said that moments ago. What I can tell you is what our perspective is. What I can tell you is how we see things.
Polls that the electorate
I
the
want to hang
electorate
on
are-
there. Clip, hang on. Let's get James Rosen in here. Dr. Rosen, welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
It's good to be with you, Mike. I don't know that I think of myself as a pit bull, perhaps Great Dane or something a little more, elevated or what have you.
Oh,
No
I'm
offense to
sorry.
pit bull owners out there.
I have great respect for pit bulls. I consider them to be
I do
noble
too.
creatures. So I'm
Especially
sorry
when
if
they're
that.
6 inches away from me. No,
Yeah,
I'm
well-
kidding. And no offense. Great to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
James, as I watched that video of the press secretary, the minute you started doing what I like to call painting her into the corners, because I think you lay out where you're going in your questions very well, she gave you an eye roll that was so fast. I've not seen it. And it was like, oh, my God, I can't believe I have to go here. Is there ever any sense of, I guess, less than happiness from the press secretary? Does she ever have moments after these interactions where she tells you that wasn't a good question or was an unfair question?
My relations with Karine Jean Pierre are what they would say in Latin is de minimis, and I wish they were more plentiful. The fact that she called on me at all was remarkable. It was the last set of questions in yesterday's briefing. And when I said thank you and I paused and said, as always, she laughed out loud because it was a sort of gentle nod to the fact that she had not called on me to ask her a question since May, over 6 months ago. And she said, I wonder if I'll regret it. I might regret it, words to that effect. And I said, I assure you, you will not. After the exchange was over, the one that you just played, reporters from a number of outlets, including the mainstream outlets, came to me and said she definitely regrets that question. What was remarkable about this exchange, aside from the fact that I got called on, was that first, after 2+ years of the president's job approval ratings being underwater, we had heard so many different approaches from the White House and the president and his team. You're not reading the right polls, or polls are totally unreliable as a science today, or we don't bother with polls at all. And here's another speech and here's another slogan. And none of it worked. The polls have remained, the job approval ratings, underwater for 2+ years, since the fall of Kabul. And in fact, on this very day, according to Real Clear Politics and their average of major reliable polls that they compile, Mr. Biden stands 15 points underwater. And finally, at last, in response to that question, you heard Karine Jean Pierre say something very important. Number one, that she doesn't challenge the accuracy of these polls. Okay? And that was important. And number two, you heard her say, we're not going to change the minds of Americans. I get that. And that was, in essence, an acknowledgement from the very face, the woman who is the face of the White House communications apparatus, that the Biden White House no longer expects to be able to turn those numbers around before the president stands for re-election. It was an extraordinary admission. We're not going to change the minds of Americans. I get that. And that means that Bidenomics as a slogan, the curtailing of the president's media appearances, all the different means they've tried to put a dent or reverse those those job approval numbers. She in essence admitted to me in that exchange, we're not going to change those American minds. So we're going to have our president be the standard bearer with no hope really of turning around his job approval ratings. She then went on to make a point that Presidents Clinton and Obama faced similar headwinds at the same point in their respective terms. But if you actually go back and look at the polling from Gallup and RealClearPolitics.com, you will see that both President Clinton and President Obama were in a much better polling environment at this point in their respective terms than the incumbent is now.
Yeah, I can't remember any president being in this bad a shape, especially those two, Clinton and Obama, as you mentioned. So, James Rosen from NewsMax, are you telling us that this could have effectively been the White House and the Biden campaign waving a white flag about 2024? Would that possibly indicate that there may be a chance Joe Biden would reconsider running in 2024?
I don't think it was intended as that kind of expression. I don't think Karine Jean Pierre intended to say that at all. She kind of just blurted it out. It was one of those rare Washington moments where the quiet part is spoken out loud. Certainly President Biden never expected, I think, when the White House press briefing began, and the same could be said for the re-election campaign manager, neither of them expected to hear Karine Jean Pierre tell the American people, we are not going to change the minds of the American people. I get that. It was a kind of an acknowledgement of defeat in the limited area of doing something to turn around those job approval numbers. I don't interpret it as an expression that to the effect that the president is thinking about stepping down from the race. In fact, there are no indications that President Biden intends anything other than to finish out this race. But we live in volatile times, Michael Opelka. One day there's a Twin Towers and one day there isn't. And one day there's the Lehman Brothers and one day there isn't. And one day the former president of the United States is indicted 91 times, or over several days, let's say. The point being that anyone who were to tell you that they know with certainty that either Joe Biden and Donald Trump will even be alive a year from now, let alone be the nominees, I think is to be taken with a grain of salt.
You bring up a really interesting point when you bring in Donald Trump in conjunction with Joe Biden as it relates to the ages of both of these gentlemen. Yesterday, the news was all about Joe Biden's age being 81 years old, and a lot of people questioning whether or not that was going to be a significant factor in the 2024 elections. And then Donald Trump has his doctor release unsolicited a statement regarding not only his physical but his cognitive health. That to me seemed like a very clever and very smart move. Is this the Trump campaign, in your opinion, fighting back? Because of late, the mainstream media keeps saying, yeah, Joe Biden's 81, but let's not forget in June of next year, Donald Trump will be 78. And they seem to now be shifting to saying, we can't do anything about Biden's age, but we can remind you that Trump is not that far behind.
There has been a flurry of recent reporting about moments in former President Trump's campaign appearances where he has lost his train of thought or where he has identified himself as being in the wrong place. Some of these are the standard kind of gaffes that public figures make when they have such a robust speaking schedule. Barack Obama, who was nowhere near creeping senescence when he was a candidate and president of the United States, would sometimes get wrong the place where he was speaking. So some of these are really probably not of concern, but there has nonetheless been an effort to draw more attention on the part of the mainstream media to former President Trump's age as well. Neither of these men is young. One is over 80 and one's pushing 80. And when you say, will this be an issue in 2024, I think it already is.
Yeah, it apparently is. We know that it will be. It's the first time I've seen age whataboutism be brought into it. And I think that's where it's headed. James Rosen, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a question totally off the political spectrum and into the musical spectrum, knowing what a Beatles freak you are and a big fan. The Beatles single, the last single that was released just a couple of weeks ago, how did you rate that song?
So first, I'm very glad, Mike, that you used the proper terminology of Beatles freak, which is, technically speaking, one level above fan. My sons, their actual middle names are Lennon and McCartney, which is evidence of my neurosis and my wife's patience. I kid you not. I fully expect at some point they're going to say to me, Dad, why couldn't you name us after somebody cool like Duran and Duran?
Oh, God.
And, I'm one of those collectors of bootlegs and scratchy demos and so forth. So I've had the John Lennon composition now and then, the various demos of it, and also the session work from 1995 that the Threedles performed on that composition for many years. I wept. I thought it was not the greatest Beatles song, but it certainly sounded like the Beatles to me. And the eeriness of hearing John Lennon's voice was very affecting. The official video for the song, directed by Sir Peter Jackson, totally reduced me to putty. It was to see the way he was able to have the figures of the young Beatles casually interact with the elderly Beatles was just too much for me to take. And a lot of people wrote to me that they responded similarly, that they were crying and weeping about this song. And part of it, I think, has to do also with the times into which the song was released. all of these atrocities and horrors around the world that we're seeing right now, all of the dysfunction in our own country that we're seeing. This was just what the world needed right now, was a little dose of Beatles magic. So I welcome Now and Then to the official canon.
Yeah, I didn't have quite the emotional response you had. I did have chills go up and down my spine when I heard Lennon's voice and the magic that had been created using all the technology. And I think Peter Jackson never gets enough credit as a director and as a creative force, because he has truly given us some amazing magic in many different arenas. But this one may be the greatest thing he's done. And I have to ask you, because, you know, we set the clocks back a couple weeks ago. We turned the clocks back, but we had a new Beatles song drop, and the Rolling Stones had the #1 album in the country. Did we move the clocks back too far?
Well, I could be a typical Washington reporter and say to you, time will tell. My answer is no. And by the way, Sir Peter Jackson just announced that he has purchased the tapes from December 31, 1962, the New Year's Eve show in Hamburg at the Star Club that the Beatles played with Ringo Starr. Those are pretty muddy recordings, but wow, they're going to sound good when Peter Jackson gets through with them.
I did not know that. That's a little bit of breaking Beatles news, and courtesy of James Rosen. So I appreciate you taking us away from the political tip for a little bit, and certainly your passion is so important. So thank you for sharing it with us at all times. James Rosen, you should follow on Twitter X. It's at James Rosen TV. He's always got something important to share, and I apologize for calling you a pit bull. Next time, I will give you some sort of appropriate canine designation, even better than a pit bull.
Probably better than poodle or snickerdoodle or any other.
As a poodle owner, I reject that, sir.
I knew I was going to offend someone.
Yeah, well, you offended the right guy, because, I really don't care. I like you too much. James Rosen, thank you for sharing your time with us, sir. It is appreciated.
Thank you, Mike.
And there he goes, the great James Rosen. Also a guy who's a big fan of the Chesapeake Bay. That's one of the reasons you follow him. He covers not just the news and the politics, but some of the entertainment with the Beatles, and his love of the Chesapeake Bay is in exhibit on all of his postings as well. It is the Vince Coglianese Show. Mike Opelka sitting in for Vince today, and God willing tomorrow, and happy to be here as we ramp up for Thanksgiving. A lot of you getting ready to travel. I hope you get clear roads and open skies. I know I'm watching all the cable updates on the traffic in the airwaves and the traffic in the air over our cities. And there were like 3,000 delays today, of course. And I'd like to compare that with a normal day. You know, everybody's freaking out, 3,000 delays. And then I look and there were 40 cancellations. That doesn't seem that many out of like 20,000 flights. I'm just saying, 40 flights canceled out of 20,000, not a big deal. But you knew it was going to be crazy when you decided to travel for Thanksgiving, instead of people like me and my wife who will stay at home. So much more to get to in the next hour. There are updates on the gag order on Donald Trump and the Jack Smith case. There appears to be some news there. And we also have some more news from Donald Trump as to what he plans on doing if he is returned to the White House in 2025. Because a lot of people are saying, well, when he's back in 2024, no, he wouldn't be inaugurated until 2025. And Susan Sarandon, the Oscar-winning actress, said some stupid things last week about Jewish people now know what it feels like to be a Muslim in America. Well, there's a price to pay for being stupid. I'll explain just around the corner. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show.